You should try Brown Dust 2. First and foremost, they're having their anniversary really soon, specifically on the 20th, meaning that you're going to get a bunch of pulls, about 200, alongside a free +5 unit, which is the equivalent to a free C6 unit, or a free maximum broken unit in Nikke, alongside a rerun of all the summer events, alongside a rerun of all the summer skins, and respective updates. But if you start now, specifically earlier, you do have access to Cat Eris, Eris Esteemed Adventurer, which is usually, strictly speaking in terms of damage, the better variation, though Cat Eris does buff up physical damage. And keep in mind, Esteemed Adventurer Eris and Respected Master Roxy are both free, whereas the Succubus variation of Roxy and the Cat variation of Eris are costumes that you have to roll for. But alongside that, you have your initial, mind you, this banner lasts until the 20th of June, which is when the anniversary period will start, and this costume lasts that same amount of time. You get a daily free roll on every banner, including the gear banners. Keep in mind that aside, you also have the numerous different mini games, which are pretty easy to do because you can just auto them basically each day, and they give you tons of rewards, including in this instance, the free Roxy. Aside from the fact that the more variations of a copy you pick up of either the character or their respective alts, for instance, Eris here versus Eris here, the more you get in return. A 10, a 10, a 10, a 10, and then finally 20 of these ancient crystals, which are basically used for creating UR gear, but that's something you're gonna deal with much later on. Meaning that if you like Mushoku Tensei, now is a great time to start. Because bluntly speaking, both variations of these characters, specifically the free variations, are extremely good. Whilst Succubus Roxy isn't super useful, at least in my opinion, she does have this animation, which in my opinion is the entire reason you'd summon her, because why wouldn't you pull for this? Because yes, whilst the free variation, or more specifically this free alt here, is very nice in terms of the ult animation and it's very good damage wise, the animation isn't nearly as sensual. Eris on the other hand has this one for a cat costume, which in my opinion is still pretty good. I'd say that Succubus Roxy has a better one, but beyond that, and speaking completely separately from their animations here, both characters are great. In my opinion, if you're looking to aim for one, I would say Cat Eris provides you with more for your physical teams, as opposed to Succubus Roxy. Now, keeping in mind that you will eventually want a physical and a magic team, so you do ideally want characters who can amplify both, Eris works extremely well with her other variation of herself, because you can use the Cat Eris to boost physical damage that your enemy takes, and then set that up for your other variation of herself, i.e. Esteemed Adventurer. Whereas Succubus Roxy doesn't have any way to benefit Respected Master Roxy, who has high damage, who has a high range, but that's really it. So in my opinion, if you're looking to aim specifically for one, I'd say that Cat Eris has more synergy with herself, whereas Succubus Roxy is just there for the animation. But beyond that, I particularly enjoyed my time with this game. Now, PvP isn't something I've particularly concerned myself with, but the fact that Evo Castle already has so many different modes, it's basically the equivalent to doing a Abyss if you're a Genshin player, or MOC if you're an HSR player, or whatever the case may be. Think of it like Tribe Tower in you're essentially constantly challenging different floors. And in this instance, you can continuously and repeatedly challenge it until you just can't clear it anymore. Wrath, Desire, Jealousy, and Pride, with Pride being your much wider and larger stages, but bigger rewards as a result. Jealousy being the one that exemplifies and really wants you to have a physical team because all the enemies are immune to magic. Or more specifically, that's Wrath. But you get 50% crit rate increase in these. And you can check these out as your stats, but realistically speaking, the benefit of these is that regardless of the tower you choose, you can individually challenge these. You're not required to go through them all at the exact same time. So for me, I challenged this because I had a physical team built up already. I did not have a magic team, so it was much more difficult for me to say hypothetically go to a Tower of Wrath, which is immune to Fizz, because I only have Roxy who's really built up. Desire, on the other hand, just has bigger enemies, so you're facing off against waves. And whilst I'm much stronger than I was before and can push much further into this, it's still a situation to where you do, at certain points, have to consider what buffs am I getting. Because hypothetically speaking, for me, in this team, the 50% crit rate means that my Rao, who's buffing crit rate already, has less value, because I'm going to over crit. And considering Evo Castle is getting the RNG mode, which is the equivalent to integrated strategies from Arknights, it's really fun. Excluding that specific game mode, you have Last Night, which is basically you and 20 of your respective members and party members trying to hit the highest number possible against a specific boss. You then have your growth, which is basically how you're farming for gold and how you're farming for slums, which your experience, farming for crystals, how to level up characters. You have your character packs, which are individual parallel world stories based around specific characters. And then your main story, wherein the first couple chapters give you free characters, specifically chapters 1 through 3, where everybody else who's featured within the main campaign of their respective story is available for recruitment via the pub. So you can and do have good opportunities to pick up new characters. If you're starting right now during the Mushoku Tensei event, you can farm out the event stages repeatedly to buy out the entire shop. This gear is very good, especially early on when you don't have the ability to craft it yet. And considering its guaranteed SSS stat distribution, that's wonderful. The same applies for the star variation of this gear, which mind you, yeah, you're still rolling that secondary stat here, but it's still useful. Your primary picks from this event shop will be your Goddess Tears. If you get either one of these respective armor pieces, your Beast Claw will be next because that's the only way you can level up these pieces. Ancient crystals are very much a rarity because you're using those to refine and build up your UR gear. And so my prioritization would be the Goddess's Tears, followed by the Beast Clutch and the Berserker's Claw to level up those, followed by Ancient Crystals and then Refining Crystals. Everything else is at your leisure. The ability points are super useful if you're crafting a bunch of stuff. The draw tickets are draw tickets. I'd say they're your last priority, and everything else up here is just nice to have, including the refining powder. For those of you who like building, you have numerous different options. You can craft a bunch of gear, some prioritizing defense, some prioritizing HP, magic resistance, and so on. Defense being your resistance to physical attacks, whereas HP just being your flat HP amount. These are good for characters who gives buffs based on HP, like Rao. You then can prioritize crit damage. If you really want to crit fish, you can. I particularly hate crit fishing. So my Eris here is built with 62 crit rate because Rao is giving 40%. I will lower this once I get Rao to +2, which gives me more crit rate. The music in this game, it's great. Legitimately speaking, for the time I've been playing this game, I have not had a bad experience. I pulled a lot. I've rolled a lot. I've gotten the characters I want. And yeah, the gacha, it feels pretty generous. Now, don't get me wrong, this has a system similar to Blue Archive wherein it takes 200 draws to essentially buy the unit. But you're guaranteed a character every 100 draws. You can get a bunch of characters earlier than that. If I'm looking at my draw record for Eris in particular, I've obviously gotten this UR gear, which is an off banner. But if I'm calling through specifically the UR characters I've gotten, the high grades, I got Eclipse as an off rate, Helena as an off rate, Eris again as an on rate. In that same pull, I obviously pick up a few 4 stars here and there. But for me in particular, in my banner history, it's been about 1 5-star every 50 or so pulls. And keep in mind, because you have your record here, what it essentially means is that yes, there is a notation rate of 1.5%. If you are below that 1.5%, your rates will eventually start to even out. If you're above it, they will start to lower out until you essentially match the notation rate. So if you have really good luck, eventually that good luck will start to fade, either immediately or very, very slowly. Keep in mind, when you're starting out an account, you get the initial 40 pulls. You have a bunch of stuff from achievements you're getting. You have the daily amount of pulls you're getting. You have your daily free pulls you're getting. You have all the codes you can claim. If you are around for the anniversary stream, you got about 20 to 30 pulls in total. And so while that's PvP, you don't really need to concern yourself with it. You can do it daily if you really want to. That's what I do just to fill up some time. But overall, I'd say the experience with the game and the experience I've had thus far has been great. Do I particularly concern myself with PvP? No, not at all. But it's something you can do. A lot of these systems in this game can be trialed over and over again via auto, and so it saves you a lot of time. Once you clear out some of the farming stages once in full, you can just set that to run and sweep it. So you're not repeatedly doing the same stages over and over again. This can take as much time as you want per day or as little time as you want. If you have and want to do the character packs and the main quest line, you can take some time. If you don't want to do that, you can ignore that. You aren't necessarily gated by a stamina system within context to the stories. You are gated by a stamina system in regards to stuff like your farming for materials, whether that be the resources you need to craft, whether that be your experience or money, that is gated. And so your experience and your enjoyment may differ depending on what gameplay you prefer. I like this as a very off the record casual game that I can play here and there. It doesn't require that much attention, but I will say for the fact that for me at least it's kind of flew under the radar, I've had an amazing time and I'm going to stick with this long term because all the characters are hot. And the gameplay is very fun, and the music is a banger unnecessarily. Like, I started this game and did not expect every track to hit, but I've enjoyed my time with it. And so I can comfortably recommend it to any of you. My UID will be in the description down below. If you play it, tell me your thoughts down below. I would say the only thing I wish this game had was relationship stories, so I could experience and learn more about the characters. Even excluding the characters like Eris and Roxy, who are collab characters, I want to learn more about the units I like. And their featuring within the main story, sure, it's there, but it's not necessarily enough to endear me to them. But given the amount of quality of life this game has gotten over time, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they added it at some point in the future. I mean, I play Aether Gazer, which barely has any of those. But with that being said, this game has a PC launcher, specifically on Google Play Games Beta. This game runs great with emulators, and you can run it pretty comfortably on your phone. So pick it up, try it out, and if you don't like it, hey, that's perfectly fine, but at least you have been around for Annie. And for the collabs. By the way, I'll see you guys next time.